favor the other when it has to do with hunger, you know. But that's the way it is now. You know, you have people who report the sport now. They have more fans than they are reporters. So that can throw a lot of things in the way there. You know, because if you're a fan of a fighter and you're a critic, then you're just going to watch the fighter that you're a fan of. You're not going to even see what the other fighter is doing. That's human nature, because you're a fanboy instead of doing your job as a professional. So people are going to have their favorites, you know, and I encourage all fighters who feel like they have done enough and they have done enough, and that they feel like they're getting maybe the short end of a stick, you know. I think one of the things that bothered me within the last few months is, how the Axeman was treated. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Lomachenko. I mean, you know, I admire fighters no matter where you're from. If you can fight, I'm an admirer of you. It doesn't matter to me where you're from. And this kid has got the talent and the ability. But, you know, to really build a guy against a guy who hasn't fought in a year and a half, and you know he's not going to be at his best, and then he has no financial incentive, because he's like, I'm a champion, but here's a guy getting $1 million and I'm getting 300. You know, that could really tax a person. And then not to have the tune-up fights and things like that, and then have another man's name built off your inactivity. Now, I'm not saying that the Axeman would have won that fight if he'd have been active, but we never know. I'm not saying he would have, and I'm not saying he would, but let's at least acknowledge the fact when they said that he quit. I mean, anybody who reported that, if they felt that they had gotten to a certain position, if one of the critics had felt they got to a certain position, and then another journalist came along, so to speak, and they were offered 3 times the money, they would be offended by that. If you take some of the writers for some of the websites, for instance, Doug Fisher or even Dan Raphael, they brought somebody to ESPN and paid them 3 times the money without them paying the due, so to speak, they would be offended by that. So that kind of bothered me a little bit, because it wasn't an equal playing field, so to speak, in terms of him getting his fair share of not just the money, but the opportunity to fight. But he was put on the shelf because he was unhappy with the money that was offered to him. And then so he was put in a position to where he was starved, so to speak, where he ended up a year later still having to take the same amount of money, and that doesn't make for a real good fight. I mean, geez, at least James Kirkland who was in the same situation. I believe he got close to $1 million to fight Canelo. So money was not a negative matter for him. The matter for him was that they picked him at the right time. He was inactive, and he had been active for a while. I don't think if James Kirkland would have been fighting for hand, and they wouldn't have even took that fight. But it is what it is. I think it's just a lesson for all minorities, I believe, that don't get promoted properly. I mean, it kind of needs to fall back on the promoters. If you say you're a promoter, then you should be able to promote anybody, and you should have the whereabouts, you should have the knowledge and the whereabouts, where to go, and you should have the incentive, and you should have the cultural sensitivity to know how to promote who you sign. Because whatever your cut is from that fighter, that you signed and said you're going to promote, your money's not going to change. You're going to get your percentage regardless. So if you give me a sales pitch that you're going to promote me in a sales, and I guarantee you every fighter that sat in on that first initial meeting, the promises that were made to them, they can come back and tell you up and down how many of those promises were broke. But if you're going to be a promoter and you want to promote me, then you have to get out there and find out what generates and what motivates the people and everybody else to come see me fight, right? You have to be a promoter. But after 10, 15, 20 fights come along, don't come along now and say all of a sudden that I'm not this and I'm not that. You couldn't say anything about the Axeman didn't have any power. You couldn't say that. You couldn't say he never fought anybody. You couldn't say, it's just that you took sides with a foreign, you took sides with another fighter and you didn't give the other fighter who was under your banner and you didn't give him the same opportunity to be acknowledged in that fight, particularly coming off a year and a half activity. As a promoter, I mean, it seems like the right thing to say would be, look, you haven't fought in a while, I know it's going to be tough for you. The chances of you being at your best might not materialize, but, I want you to know that I still appreciate you taking the fight, and, I want to give you some financial incentives so it just won't be for nothing. But that didn't really happen. So it is what it is. But the pound for pound thing now has come as it's not who you beat now, it's how you look. So, okay, well now, let's feed some of these fighters some easy fights so they can look good now. It's how you look.
Oh, you mean Triple G?
Well, I mean that's how it is now. Now I got a poster right here. It says right there. What does it say at the top? The very top.
Pound for
pound. Right? But obvious now it was meant for this guy. Because after the fight was over, because some people was not happy with the decision, now we're going to make up a new set of rules. Right? We're not going to stick to our word. We're just going to make up a new set of rules. It's not who you beat. It's how you look beating them. You see? So that's in order to take away, the accomplishment in a close fight. That's to say the judges don't know their job. That's to say the referee don't know his. And everybody involved were right there. They didn't know their job, didn't do what they were supposed to do. And the only people that know boxing is the ones that report on it. So the critics became judges. They became referees. They became everything instead of staying in their lane. See? So really it goes down now to who you like. It's not about who actually did what they were supposed to do. It's about who you like. What do they expect when you move a guy up, a middleweight up to fight a light heavyweight who's supposed to have all the advantages, and you expected him to dominate the fight, and he didn't. And when the smaller fighter showed that he had the fortitude and the drive to overcome the adversity, a lot of people resented that. So, but we know who pound for pound is.
Okay, Virgil, I gotta ask you that since you were talking about the politics of boxing, do you think HBO has put too much emphasis on promoting fighters strictly that's not from America and basically just focusing on fighters that look anything but, American and a little, darker, because it just appears to me that they're too fixated on going out of their way to promote foreign fighters, based off they don't seem to have interest in promoting American fighters. Look how the situation is going on with Crawford, and then you look at Lomachenko, a guy who's had less than 10 fights, but they seem just putting just straight focus on just making HBO about foreign fighters, whether it's Manny Pacquiao at times, Lomachenko, Triple G, or Sergey Kovalov. Do you think HBO should focus just as much on American-born fighters, just as much as they focus on foreign fighters?
Well, Andre Ward was your last gold medalist in America. And let me just say this. I don't include Peter Nelson in the movement, in the direction that HBO is going in. He just got that chair. I think all that was set up and that mindset was in place before Peter assumed the chair. I believe that he has a character about him that would distribute the praise and distribute the choices evenly. I don't know how much of a governor and a gag he has on him, but I get the impression that he's not being given the chance to be innovative, like the innovative person that he is. So he has to come in and sort of go along with the consensus I believe was already, like I said, put in place before he got there. Well, enough people have said that the network is biased towards American fighters, particularly African American fighters. But I think the lesson that fighters need to learn is no matter how many times you have represented HBO or you fought on the network, that when you have no more use to them, that they will shelve you. It's like Manny now. They don't seem to have any more use for him. Bradley's been on the shelf for a while. In Crawford's case, I think if it was the other way around, Pacquiao would have got the fight. I mean, why they're holding Crawford back, I have no idea. He should have got the fight with Pacquiao before Vargas or anybody. Now, 1 minute they say Roach killed the fight. Wow, if he's got that kind of power, that's great. And then in the next minute, they have another reason why. But I can only go on, you judge a tree by the fruit it bears. So I can only go on what I hear and see. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But, the consensus seems to be favorable, towards the European fighter. Or whoever else that they choose to be, their favorites. It could be because you get them for less money. It could be for a lot of reasons. It's just like in the real world. Some immigrants and your favorite, it's not as difficult to get into the country if you're from Amsterdam or Denmark as it is if you're from Mexico, Haiti, or some of the other countries. So it's nothing new if you live long enough. But as long as minority fighters understand this and see it for what it really is, then I think some changes can be made. There's no sense in talking about the USA boxing program, which I'm going to be bringing a lot of notice to in the next few months for some of the negativity that they're projecting. That's why we don't win medals. That's why kids now are willing to sit out at 17 years old, willing to sit out a year until they can turn pro rather than go through the politics of the USA boxing program.